Welcome to my What's the Clock talk about Linux clock subsystem internals. First of all, who am I? I worked in the Linux and embedded firmware field for the last 14 years. For my previous job, I was a principal engineer for porting Linux on the custom ARM SoCs. And I worked with SoC design team, so I was a software guy with the hardware guys. For the last 5 years, I'm an engineer at Baylibre in south of France, and one of my upstream tasks is to write support for AMLogic SoCs in Linux and U-boot. In this task, I was contributing for the clock driver, for the AMLogic clock driver for the last 3 years and a half. So what's the clock? First, I will speak about how the hardware handles the clock. So I'm not a hardware guy or electronical engineer guy, so it may be incorrect or partially correct, but it's only here to have the keywords and to understand the underlying hardware constraints and designs, to understand how the clock framework has been designed in Linux. So, hardware. What is a clock? A clock in hardware is only a signal. A signal can be 0, 1, okay? So, a clock is a continuous signal with two edges, rising, falling, and between the edge you have a width. Between the same edge we have a period, and when the period repeats you have a frequency. This is a clock. So normally it's stable. You should have the same period over time, the same width and the same frequency. The clock can have a duty cycle, so you not always have the same length between the width at 1 and the width at 0, and the time from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1 is not always instantaneous. You have a time called setup before and a time called hold after to be sure the clock is stable after and before these times. When you have multiple clocks, or when you take a clock and you derive it in multiple clocks, you can have different phases. We define phases in degrees, okay? And each clock are not either, and you can have jitter. And jitter is when you slightly have a change in width and period, and this can be really harmful for the stability of the system. So yeah, you expect a perfect clock like you see on a logic analyzer, but yeah, the reality is not the same. On a scope, you see what effectively goes on the line, and often is not really that beautiful. So the structure, a clock in the system is the heartbeat of the system. Okay. Everything is synchronous to a clock, okay, and often the system takes a source of clock, an external clock like an oscillator or a crystal, and generates like we call a tree, a clock tree. It will divide, multiply, gate or whatever the clock to give each function of the SoC a particular clock with a specific phase, a specific duty cycle, and so on. So, in order to generate and provide the clock in the system, you have multiple components. So first you have an external clock. We call it a crystal, okay? You have external oscillators, but you also have internal oscillators in SoCs, often used for very low clocks, like the 42 kHz clock. In the SoCs, you have PLLs, dividers, gate, muxes, and clock synchronization, when you have multiple clocks from different sources to synchronize them. So what is a PLL? So a PLL is used to take a clock in entry and generate a different clock in output. Okay, so it's really a complex system. It's mainly used to take, for example, a 24 MHz output clock and generate a multi-gigahertz internal clock to clock the full system. So if you're interested, you can go in Wikipedia to see all the electronical and physical theory on the PLL. It's really complex. Okay, I won't go in detail in there. So here is the parallel. Often the parallel you will have a multiplier and a divider component to generate a clock, and you often have a pre-divider and a post-divider before and after the PLL. A gate. There's a lot of gates in the system in general because you don't want all the system to be clocked at the same time, so you want to disable some components of the system, some functions. So you put gates in front of the function, so the clock doesn't go anymore to the function, but you cannot cut the clock when you want. So hardware engineers use latches to actually stop the clock after a period or between two periods, for example. So you also have mixes. Mixes is you can have multiple clocks sources for a function. So hardware engineers have multiple choices for mixes. You can have really simple mixes, so you take the clock. So when you change the mux, it's directly changed the clock. So you can change in the middle of the between two periods, so it will put a glitch. Or you can really have complex digital glitch-free mixes like this one, which are more expensive in other hardware for very sensitive functions. So this is a sort of example of SoC with you see an external crystal oscillator which come in the package. It goes in a gate because you, for example, you could cut the external crystal accelerator for the shutdown system or for reset, for example. This crystal accelerator can go into multiple PLLs, not only one. The output of the PLL, for example, can go to the bus clock, and this bus clock can go to each functions, internal or external functions, with a gate before them. And for example, the same PLL clock that is not divided, for example, can go to the DDR controller and clock the memory. For complex functions, for fast functions like HDMI, MMC, and so on, you could have a separate PLL that use the same source clock, which could generate a much higher clock for HDMI 4K, for example. And this could go on a MUX, and this function could select between the bus clock, the first PLL, or the second PLL for the third clock. It's really, really classic design. So in the Linux world, we used to call the group MUX, divider, and gate as a composite clock, because in systems you see a lot of these groups of clock before functions and so on. So let's see in software how it was implemented. So historically, Linux driver handled the clocks by themselves. So for example, they had a UART driver or CPU FREC. They had hard-coded in the driver, this device can do, for example, 100 kHz for I2C or so on, and they had to calculate the clock locally with inside the divider or the MUX, knowing the input was this one and so on. But each driver managed its own side. You couldn't really link a source clock with a function. It was really hard to port it on multiple SoC. In the same family, you could have different PLL different bus clocks and so on. So it was really complex to handle at the end. So RMK started. All this started in 2K4 with the integrator, the ARM integrator family, in really basic clock code, which was only here to set the PLL. So we call it VCO. VCO is the core of the PLL. So the VCO is what generates the clock, and the PLL globally is the group with the pre-divider, the post-divider, and so on, the filters and so on. So this was really designed for one function to set the PLL of the system. So here we call VCO the multiple PLLs of the system. It was really basic at the time, and only for one architecture. So 2 years later, finally it was moved to a common clock.h. It managed to handle the basic function of the clock. So you want to enable the clock for gate, for example, or PLLs, get the rate, actual rate, calculate if the rate was achievable, set rate, and change the parent of the clock for a mux, and get the actual parent. Okay. So, but it was still not managed in a common fashion. So every machine code implemented then their own clock code. For example, the integrator did an implementation was basic. OMAP did implementation, and each platform drivers use them at some point. It was because the implementation was not the same for each, the usage was not the same at all. For example, you see the Mac integrator clock.c. It was really basic. It was only they kept the VCO setup from the early code, and only added DOM functions for enable, disable, set mux, and so on. And for example, OMAP did a complete implementation. You could change parent, you could set PLL, the clock set rate will go through the tree to set the rate to the parent and so on. So they did a great job, and it was not enough, so they added some custom functions, so like clock use, use count, which was needed for the use case, which was missing from the initial clock.h. So there were a clash because, for example, it was okay for platform-only drivers, for OMAP only, for ARM only, but often you will have generic IPs that needed a clock input, so they could set rate, change the parent. And since the implementation was different for each platform, it needed some different implementation and different behavior, so you have some if-def and so on. And worst of all, you have different duplication of clock logic. For example, all the rate calculation, propagation, and the parenting system was made for OMAP, but not for other, or did differently, or maybe badly. For example, all the clock rounding was maybe done correctly for OMAP and not for the other platform. So it was not right. And for example, I'm part of the ones who added a fake clock to satisfy a driver, which is not something I want to speak about. So to solve this inconsistency, okay, Mike Turkett, who worked for TI at the time, introduced the common clock framework. Okay, so it was like 5 years later. So for 5 years, they handled this stuff, but at one point it was not manageable. So it was The result was the consolidation of many different struct clock definitions and different framework implementations. And the goal is an implementation of the well-known clock API. Okay, so they kept the clock.h API, which was okay-ish, okay, but they took all the different implementation and made a common one with all the good practices and the good algorithm. So the idea of the global clock framework is it's not a standalone framework like other stuff like HCI, PCI, and so on, where it was really around a driver for all devices. No, here it's the real framework. It's a library. So drivers are responsible for populating the framework with a clock topology, okay, and plugging the ops, the callbacks, physically programming the hardware. So when a driver puts the clocks to the framework, it stays in common. So you can group, you can link clocks from one driver to another driver. Is the goal of the common clock framework. So with the library, you need to provide some clock ops. It's the base of the clock control drivers. So for each clock of your system, you will provide some, not all of them, some of the callbacks. For example, prepare and prepare mandatory. For example, init is mandatory, but not all clocks can handle all the functions. For example, only gates can enable, disable, and so on. So, for example, for dividers, you will need a recal count, recal rate, round rate, set rate. For mixes, set parent, get parent. For PLL, you need almost everything except the parenting. And you can have wild clocks, for example, which needs all the calls, for example. Or you can have really basic clocks, the fixed clocks, with only one callback, get rate, for example. So when you give all your clocks with the list of the parents, the framework will build a clock tree. It will link the parent of each clock with the name of the clock to generate a tree. It will cache the current parent. It will calculate in the tree a rate per clock. It will cache the clock by working the tree, by reading the registers and by calling get rate for each clock. If the get rate, if it's not implemented, it takes the clock of the parent, for example. And you will have a complete tree of clock rates. And when you want to change the clock, you do set rate, for example, or get round clock. It will work the tree recursively to match the request by reparenting, for example, if possible. If asked, you have flags, you say you can reparent or you cannot reparent, for example. And you also have enable disable. For example, if you do disable for a clock which doesn't have the enable disable codes, it will propagate to all the parents. It will not disable all the clocks of them because it has some counters, some enables and disable counters. For example, you won't cut the main gate because all the enable, the previous enable will also propagate to all the clocks up to the root clock. So the enable count will only decrease by 1 if you do a disable. So since the beginning, it has quite evolved over the time. So you have clocking notifier, for example, you can be notified when on multiple events like clock change, parent change, pre-clock change, or pre-parent change. So you can act on the system. For example, if we use the clock notifier on AMLogic to do DVFS, where the clock path of the CPU is quite complex. So you need to when you change the clock rate on one path, you are notified before changing, so you can switch to a safe clock until the clock framework did the change on one part of the tree, and afterwards you are notified the post change, and you can put back to the change tree. You have device tree support, which is a big thing, because before device tree it was quite complex to use. They added clock accuracy support. It's not really used. You can specify your accuracy in part per billion, and the accuracy will propagate to the subclocks, for example. You have clock phase. You can specify, change, and read the clock phase for a clock in degrees. You have clock duty cycle in a numerator-denumerator ratio. There is clock exclusivity for a consumer, because until this was merged, when a device set a clock, for example, in a tree that use a PLL, for example, so when the set rate of like say a SPI driver set a clock that change a PLL value, if another consumer use the same path, for example, the set rate of another consumer would change the PLL that change the clock of the SPI, so it was wrong. So now you can tell the clock framework, okay, my clock, I want to keep this rate, I am exclusive on all the tree of this clock, up to the root clock. So you cannot change any clock on the tree. So if another clock want to use set a rate, it will either keep one of the clock in the tree same rate, or use another rate, or fail. And you can set rate invariant with a range, a min, and a max. So before device tree, so the mapping with between a device and a clock was fixed, which was complex to write. Honestly, when before DT, when you needed to set up all the devices and their relationship and so on in C, it was really a complex and long task, honestly. So, and the Mac code is linked to the device and clock statically. So there was nothing dynamic, or you could have dynamic, it was in code. So we need to rebuild the kernel to change, so it was static. And each clock was associated to the device structure. So you could have a number of clocks for each device structure. So, but what it was really missing is how to link a clock output of a controller, for example, and a clock input of a consumer out of the clock controller and driver. There is no simple way to link, for example, a SPI controller and a SPI device. Okay, there was no simple way for that. So often it was not described at all, and it was described differently. So device tree provides a way to link a clock output to a clock input, whatever the source of the clock, whatever the consumer of the clock. Okay, a producer can be a device, and a consumer can be a controller, clock controller. It can be everywhere. So you can link clocks between clock controllers, between devices, between device and controllers, in everywhere. Before that, it was nearly impossible, it was very complex to do. So, with device tree, you can declare multiple clock providers. You can have multiple clock controllers in the system. You can declare simple clocks, clocks provided by devices, and special clocks generated by special device like PWM clocks. You can link clocks between devices, and you can set the constraints in device tree for parenting and write between clocks, for example. So this is an example in the clock bindings, for example. Like you see, the system is here. You have an oscillator going to the system. This oscillator clock can go either in the UART directly, in the PL, and the UART can take an input, two clocks, the output of the PL and the oscillator input. So this little diagram is how you express it in device tree. And everything is generic. When you set up all the specific data of the clock in device tree, and you link them with, like you see, classic device tree. Okay. So, still, the clock controller implementation is still very heterogeneous. You have a very different way to write a controller, because in the last 8 years, the maintainers introduced new way to declare a clock and so on. So you will see every clock controller driver is quite different. Unless a lot use these composite clocks and so on, because initially they thought the clock framework was not smart enough to handle the link between the component of the composite clock, which is false, because for example, for the MLG controller, what was did by Mac Turket, he did the initial controller, is we declare every node of the tree. Every node with its particularity. So if there is a gate, we declare it. If there is a divider, we declare it. And you have flags, you can tell it's read-only, you can tell it's fixed, but you need to declare everything. And then if you declare absolutely everything, the clock framework will handle it correctly, and we work the tree and set the rated parenting correctly. And it works actually. It's pretty good. And if you have an issue, you simply add a flag to a clock to tell this clock should not reparentate, for example, and so on. So I think the MLG clock controller was the most modern and the most simpler. There is absolutely no logic, MLG specific logic in it. We simply declare all the clocks. We handle the MLG specific clocks, but there is no logic in the controller driver itself. We simply declare the clocks. There is logic for the one logic is for the CPU DVFS, because you need to respect the SOC designer's clock path. Because the CPU, you need to keep, you have the right frequencies and use the right path for the CPUs, because you can have really high frequencies like 2 GHz and so on. So one of the limitations of the clock tree, the clock framework, is the tree walking, which is in recursive. So I know Stephen Boyd would like to remove it and avoid it to be recursive, but yeah. Work has started. There is an implementation, but the switch is quite big, so it may make some time to switch. It doesn't handle some now very important properties, because in the old times you only had very slow frequencies for SSD, or only the high frequencies for the CPU, and the whole system you only had low frequencies like multiples of 100 MHz. Now you have clocks that provide the HDMI output, or very fast buses. And when you go high, when you ask high gigahertz clocks, you have complex PLLs with complex settings and filters, and you have jitter, and you have depending on the path, depending on the divider values, on the multiplier value, and you have different jitter capability, and this is not handled at all. The clock framework doesn't know which path is more. So This there is a theory to solve this, to actually tell, okay, this path, this clock path, you want to handle it. I will handle it in a specific function, for example. So it's still in discussion. There is no clear way to handle it right now. On now the new ARM systems, or the new ARM v8 systems, ARM v8 systems, you have part of the system which is handled by the firmware in the SCPI or SCMI or whatever, and this firmware or this TFI firmware needs some clocks, for example, and there is a really no simple way to say, okay, this firmware use this clock for an internal device. So how to tell the NDT, for example, this is, you cannot. So there is no properly way to describe. Today we set the clock as critical, for example, in the controller, but it's not the right way to do. There is no handoff mechanism from firmware to device. For example, for DVFS, you could have your firmware that handles the DVFS, and then when Linux is fully booted, you can say, okay, now there is no more the firmware that handles it, and it's me. But in the meantime, between the firmware boot and when the handoff could be, like when the module is loaded, you could have the clock framework that cuts the gate, and cuts the clock, for example, or change the rate. So there is no simple mechanism to do that. And like I say, there is no dynamic clock path prioritization. There is no way to prioritize the clock path for HDMI. For example, when you have HDMI 2.0 for 4K, you need to provide up to 6 GHz to the PHY, for example. So you need to select your clock path, how the clock designer designed it. You can take any random path to the system to generate this value, or any PLL, for example. Okay, so this is all. If you have questions, don't hesitate.